That's Al Anderson playing in front of 22,000 people at Western Springs in Auckland, along with Bob Marley and the Wailers in 1979. Al is bringing his original Wailers back to Auckland later this month, so we caught up with him in Florida and asked him about that historic concert, one that affected so many people and still does.
It was heavy for us. The Maoris came and blessed us and took us to the temples, and we met their elders and introduced their culture and arts, and I was really impressed. Very.
Yep. So what can we expect from this tour? What do you got lined up for us?
Some new songs.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard it or not. We did a video and a song called "The Song of the Divine."
We must come together. Jah is love. Jah is love. If we are to stay alive, we got to teach the right to reach Jah
filmed in Bali, went to a Buddhist temple where the head priest there gave us the rights to record in the temple with all his people.
Nice.
And there was many priests and elders and spiritual leaders that blessed us throughout the day. We went into the mountains. There was caves and mangroves. Take a look at Song of the Divine video.
All right, we'll play it for the folks when I edit this together. It'll be a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the second song is Si Tu Me Lo Das, which is a serenade, love song.
Right.
The third song is Pierda por Pierda, which means brick by brick, stone by stone, we build our world back together.
Right.
And then we have another 6 songs to complete, and then we've got an album.
Nice. And what's the band feel like, and who's doing what? Who's doing the writing? Who's doing the playing? Who's doing the producing?
The writing is Chet Samuel and myself.
Right.
I'm producing a lot of the music. We have an African drummer named Papa Nyako. He's producing his part along with our bass player. Papa's from Ghana, Africa.
Okay.
We got a United Nations group.
Nice.
Based from Mexico.
Right.
Omar Lopez, multi-instrumentalist, genius player. And Ross Clamper on keyboards, a Jamaican, well-known. He's played with a lot of the artists, Culture, Rita Marley, and
right.
A lot of artists that he's recorded with and toured with. And Chet Samuel from Puerto Rico. Singer-songwriter, great singer, just a wonderful guy to be around. Family man, just like a loving family.
Right.
Got a big family, and he always takes his family everywhere. His daughters, mama and grandma, and myself. So we call ourselves the original Wailers, although they're not from the original Wailers group.
Sure.
I had the opportunity to play with Peter, Bob, and Bunny, and decided to call the group the original Wailers only because there was so many people after Bob passed that was trying to incorporate the name Wailers to enslave us to tour for them.
Right.
And I didn't want to go along with that arrangement. So I looked in the Library of Congress to see whether I could get a name that had anything to do with Wailers that I put 50 years into.
Yep.
This is my golden anniversary, my 50th anniversary of playing the Wailers music throughout the world.
Right.
Representing the estate, the family, Island Records, Universal Records.
Yep.
Which we didn't see a fair share of, but that's another story altogether.
Yeah. That is, I'm sure it's a big story too.
It's a long story. We don't have all the time in the world for explaining that. But at the same time, I looked in the Library of Congress, and the original Wailers was available because originally the Wailers are a group from Tacoma, Washington.
I have several of their records back there.
From 1957, they were
Yeah.
called the Wailers.
Yep. Yep.
And they wrote Louie Louie,
That's right.
one of my favorite songs. Um, so that was the only thing available because there were so many bad people trying to corral the name to
Yeah.
have us work for them.
Yep.
We stayed on the road for like 15, 20 years, man, and didn't really accomplish much other than seeing the world. Financially, it wasn't a great venture,
Yep.
but spiritually, it was. So I had the opportunity to incorporate the original Wailers, and that's why we call ourselves that, and only because it was what represent all of the years that I put into working with
Sure.
Bob and
Yep.
Bunny.
Yep.
And so I felt that that was correct to, purchase that title,
Sure.
and it belongs to me.
There you go. Yeah, because I know even like a band like the Guess Who, the Canadian rock band,
Yeah.
the two main guys, Burton Cummings and Randy Bachman, had to fight for the rights for their name use, and they just finally got it back
UB40,
weeks ago.
UB40 is the only group that can understand what we're going through.
I'm sure. Yep. Yep.
There's two bands. I love both of the bands. I've toured
Yeah.
with both. I love UB40 because back in when I just started, that was the group I knew before even knowing Bob Marley and the Wailers.
Uh-huh. Man. Yep. Yep. So yes, a long, strange trip.
Strange and a trip is half of it.
Yeah. 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 So 50, how did you get 50 years ago? This is like you say, it's your anniversary. How did it begin?
At Paul Kossoff's house, the
Yeah.
lead guitarist of Free.
Right. Yeah.
He introduced me to Bob Marley and the Wailers music. Funny enough, he's introducing me to the music, and then Chris Blackwell, the CEO of Island, calls and wants him to come and do the Natty Dread session.
Right.
And he didn't want to do it because he had a couple jars and didn't want to get in the mini cab and work.
Right.
So I substituted for him and got to meet Bob and uh, talk with Chris Blackwell again because I had met him with Traffic and Free
Right.
when they were touring America and they were doing the Fillmore East
Uh-huh.
in New York, right there off of St. Mark's Place. And then I
Right.
met all those guys then, and they became really good friends. And when I was in England, we retained our friendship, and he had a great guitar collection. I was always at his house,
Right.
hanging out, playing music, and just having a jar with him, talking about blues and all the equipment that he loved. And then here comes the telephone rings, and it's somebody wanting him to come play on Bob Marley's solo album, Natty Dread, and he turned it over to me, and I got the call. So I
Right.
went down and recorded No Woman, No Cry, Soldier Say, Revolution, Talking Blues,
Man.
No Cry, and
Yeah.
that was my beginning.
Yep. Yep. So when you play No Woman, No Cry 50 years later, what goes through your mind? Has the music changed in the way that you relate to it now as the first time you heard it?
Good question. Sometimes I don't want to play it, but
Right.
people want, because I remember Eric Clapton saying that he hated to play Sunshine in Your Love, which was one of his greatest solos,
Sure.
because everybody expected him to play it note for note. And if he improvised on it, it wasn't the same as what's on Disraeli Gears.
Yep. Yep.
And so I felt the same,
Yeah.
wow. So I try to improvise on it so I don't really play it exactly like I did originally because it gets a little boring after a while.
Yep. That's why I enjoy Bob Dylan so much. I've seen him many, many times. You
Oh
never
man.
know. And granted, there are some bad shows and there are some good shows, but I'd rather go to a show where that's an option rather than, it's going to be sound exactly like the record. It's going to be a greatest hits thing. And, there's nothing special about it.
Question. Bob Dylan solo or Bob Dylan in the band?
I think solo.
Without Levon and those guys?
I love those guys, but I saw the Rolling Thunder review and
Wow.
that was something.
New York.
In Rochester, and they had Joni Mitchell showed up at that one. Roger McGuinn was there. T-Bone
Wow.
Burnett. All the yeah, it was just
Oh
mine.
yeah.
And Mick Ronson is my favorite. It was one of my favorite guitar players. It was
Me
part of the
too.
band. Oh
Yeah,
man, I
yeah.
love Mick Ronson.
He's
So
great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Had you ever met him?
Yes, I have.
Uh, so
David
when
Powell.
two guitar players who, from my perspective, seem very diverse and from different points of view meet, what do you guys talk about? Do you talk about playing?
Gear.
Yeah.
Gear. Um, how the amplifier talks to you and talks to the microphone,
Yep.
and the lead singer or the front man, because I'm not a front guy.
Right.
I like to hold the line, you know,
Yep.
like you guard your quarterback.
Right.
Lead singer's a quarterback, so he throws you the ball and you score.
Yep.
We talk about
Yeah.
gear, and how some people are not so nice to work with,
Right. I'm sure.
but you love their music, and so you just do it because you love the music. And for me, it wasn't about the money because there was no money in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then when the money came, everything changed.
Yeah.
You know, as usual, it becomes complicated.
Mm.
You're readjusting to poverty. Yeah, really,
Yeah.
you know,
I'm sure.
most artists is just eating tuna fish and spaghetti for like weeks. And then all of a sudden something happens, and then everything changes. And
Hmm.
some people can really adapt
Yep.
to the change of the wealth and the popularity, and some artists really struggle with it.
Mm. So, are there any guitar players that you up and coming or a bit from a different generation that you look to and go, well, that person's got something going on there?
There's too many
Yeah. Oh,
fantastic
that's good.
now. Um, there's a Canadian guy who plays acoustic guitar who's fabulous. I can't remember his name right now, but there's so many fabulous guitar players worldwide,
Right.
especially in South America,
Oh,
like Brazil and Spain. You know, Ray Gomez is one of my favorites. Raymond Gomez, he came on the scene. People were running for the hills, man. He brought hellfire. He just blazed. He played so much, and you would let him play as much as he could because he was so exciting.
right.
He's one of my all-time greatest favorites.
All right.
Great. I got a lot of guys that Pat Martino, George Benson, Alan
Right.
Holdsworth.
Yeah. And as a guitar player, having been playing for so many years, do you still practice a lot? Do you kind of push yourself at all, or do you kind of take it easy a little bit more these days?
I wouldn't. I never took it easy.
All
It's never easy.
right.
Times are just getting harder. Um, I noodle.
Right.
I noodle around. Always have it in my hand. You know, if I'm falling asleep, I just hold on to it. I
Mm.
just like to have it in my hands all in my lap or on my back as much as I possibly can, just so I can relate to it. It's one of my go-to
Yeah.
spiritual enlightenments is playing the guitar and music.
And were you always going to be a guitar player?
No, I wanted to do biology,
Uh-huh.
but it was too expensive.
Right.
You know, you had to have a lot of bucks to go to a good school and learn science back in the 70s, let's say,
Yeah.
late 60s. Biology and science and history was a big thing for me. English and math wasn't so good,
Hmm.
but my history was much better. And my science and biology, I got really good grades at. So, and I was pretty healthy and played all the sports, football, basketball, baseball, track.
Right.
But I got tired of that, you know, jumping through hoops to impress my coach.
Yep.
My father was a bass player. My mother was a pianist, and my uncle and my cousins played music, and mother played piano. So my uncle was a guitar player. One day he says, "Why don't you try this?" I didn't like it. It's
Yeah.
too, it hurt. But I like bass. My father was a bass player. So I played bass first.
Right.
Actually, I played trombone first.
Ah.
Then bass came, and then I dabbled with saxophone, and then I got into playing guitar. And um, this guy told me, he says, if you learn 15 songs in a week, I'll pay you $350 a week to play in a discotheque.
Right.
I learned it as quick as I possibly can.
That
And
was back when that was real money, right?
oh man, I was buying Les Pauls for that all over Syracuse and Rochester and Buffalo.
Right.
I
Right.
I could get a Les Paul for $300-400, and
You
then
ever
I
been to the
take.
House of Guitars in Rochester?
Of course, I have.
I used to work there.
What?
I made a lot of their TV ads too.
You got any guitars from that time?
No, I don't play. I sold the records.
Oh man, wow.
I wish I did. It
They had a collection.
was a
I
great
bought.
place, man. It still is. It's still up. It's still cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So guitar wise, so yeah. Did you once you realize that guitar was your thing, did you look around and look at other guitar players and kind of see who you could learn from or take from?
I had a very diverse background with guitar. 1964, I went to Manny's.
Right.
I used to work at a Swedish meat packing plant where it was like 40 below zero every day. And I
Right.
had to wear a uniform. I used to cut the cheese and all the meats and bag everything and put it on a manifest and send it out. And so I saved up enough money from working at a Swedish meatpacking plant and bought a 64 butterscotch Telecaster with a
Right.
neck, black guard, and a Bigsby. I bought a tone bender, and a guy named Francis Williams, who was teaching me chords and things, gave me his amplifier. So, man, I was all day like, Beck, Cream, Hendrix, all that stuff. And then I just realized that I started to really love Miles Davis's music. So, and I got to meet Joe Farrell and some of his saxophone players and bass players and guitar players. I met George Benson, and he showed me a couple of things along with Pat Martino. So I
Nice.
got into jazz, and rock and roll was a big thing.
Yeah.
I love Hendrix, Beck, and Clap, all those guys.
Yeah.
They had a really influential, just an overall sound. You heard their sound so much that you couldn't help but pick up something from their
Yep.
sound. They're great guitar players. Like there's so many wonderful musicians that's responsible for me being who I am. I
Right.
wish I could tell you all of them, but there's a wide variety. I started with blues and uh, kind of disco, and then the reggae thing came when I met uh, Paul in England.
Right.
I was more into Africa. I was playing with an African group called Shaka Two,
Uh,
which means in Nigerian language, it means the Mystic Five. And I was playing progressive high life music, which was slightly jazz,
yep.
and then I was introduced to reggae music through being in England
Right.
because I worked with Richard Branson
Right. Virgin.
at Virgin. The early when they had Tubular Bells.
Right.
For that, the
I know
first
the
8
roots back.
million, yeah, the first that vinyl sold 8 million,
Oh yeah.
and that's what set apart. That
Yep. Yep.
Branson really knew he was a great guy. He gave me my percentages. He gave me everything that we agreed to. But it wasn't that way when I left Virgin because the artist that I was working with Virgin, his name was Delroy Wilson, no, Delroy Washington,
Uh-huh.
and the band was Oswald,
Oh, Oswald. Yeah. Yeah.
was backing Delroy,
Uh-huh.
and he didn't want to do music anymore. So then I wandered over to Ireland through Paul,
Right.
introduced me to Ireland, which I was pretty much a tape op. I cleaned the desk, the
Right.
monitoring desk, the recording desk. I poured tea. I can't make tea. I made sandwiches for like Jimmy Page and Elton John, these guys, and Nico and Eno. I go out and grab some hash and have a smoke with them. And that's why I was learning how to be an engineer.
Right.
But then when Paul introduced me to the Wailers music and I got the call from Paul to go do Natty Dread,
Yeah.
but then everything changed from playing high life music
Yeah.
to reggae music now.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that Bob really wanted me to join his band till a week later.
Right.
After I did the Natty Dread session, Chris and Bob were still in England, and they said that they want to have a meeting with me and make me an offer to come produce music with Bob in Jamaica.
That's a big jump. That's a big leap of faith.
It was tough, because when I got to Jamaica on behalf of Bob Marley, I was homeless. I didn't have anywhere to stay.
Yeah.
I was promised accommodations, finances, and a vehicle. That was a deal.
Yeah.
But he wasn't really, he was producing his record company and his solo career.
Mm-hmm.
So everything was going into that. And I learned the hard way. It was good. Sleeping on the floor for a long time and doing all those records and not really getting compensated for it, but it was for a reason. It was for a movie. It was a lot more than myself and just money. So
sadly, that's a story that you hear over and over. People are so dedicated to what they're doing, and they will do it for almost nothing because they know, and the people who are holding the purse strings know that, and kind of take advantage of that situation. But what are you going to do?
You have to survive one way or another.
Yep. So was Bob himself a good guy to work for? Was he a taskmaster? Was he easy to get along with? Or what was it like in the studio with him?
Bob is like being in the military, and he's the general.
Gotcha.
And he called the shots. He wrote the songs. We produced them.
Yep.
As you do in the military, he tells you what to do, and you go out and do your mission.
Gotcha.
But he was tough.
Yeah.
Tough Gung is a perfect name for him. He was tough man, very spiritual, very wise. He had, he was the only person that I saw so much energy and negative and positive things coming at him. How he siphoned it all and put it to his advantage was incredible. He was an incredible man to live around. I lived around his family. I lived with his mother. I lived with his sister and brother. I know a lot of feelings, his inner feelings. Spent the last 5 months of his life in Germany with him. It's complicated.
Yeah.
But it was all for the culture. He sacrificed his life for his country, his family, his philosophy, and his friends.
Yep.
I rate him highly, along with Peter and Bunny, the same.
Right. Yep.
They were equals to me.
And really, the fact that you're coming to play in New Zealand, a place that's thousands of miles away and completely unconnected to all this stuff, and that music made such an connection with the people down here, speaks volumes for what you guys did.
Honor. It's just an honor, and just we're so elated and love coming to New Zealand because it's God's country. It's a beautiful place.
If you enjoyed this episode of the 13th Floor's Music Talk series, please be sure to subscribe to the website or to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram and wherever you find your podcasts. There's a whole lot more to discover.